So now let us prepare in mind, body, and spirit for our service today. The reading is Joyous Living, Choosing to Live. And this is by Peter Welt and Christian Sorensen. Positive change in your relationship with others comes about when you're willing to change yourself. You must learn to ask for what you want, give what you want to receive, and see the other with loving and compassionate eyes. Changing your life requires changing your own thoughts, attitudes, conversation, and perspective. Practice making these changes and you'll be amazed at how others around you mysteriously change. So if you can just now take these words within for a few moments of contemplation. So thank you, God, for this most magnificent day. As we come together and we are absolutely in that one mind, that love and energy and power and presence of God that moves through us, as us, and around us, that breathes us, that cultivates this time together, and we feel that love in this room, and we feel how that allows our attitudes to change, how it allows our hearts to open, how it allows us to feel that energy of God move through us and as us. And we begin to know that we are part of this divine power called God, that it emanates from us. And therefore, as we feel those changes, therefore, others change around us. And so I know that this same energy is that power and that presence that moves through the music ministry, through Reverend CC and through the music and every aspect of the service, as well as with the children. And so I know that it is absolutely in divine order and divine right action. And so I say it is. And so it is. Amen.
So happy almost St. Patrick's Day, by the way. I understand we've got Irish food in the social hall after the service. So our reading this morning sort of wraps up what we've been talking about in March and moves us into today. You know, we've been talking in March about how you write the script of your own life and how we shift our perspective if we want to shift our experience, because our experience is created by the beliefs that we hold that creates the way we see the world. And so our reading today, changing your life requires changing your own thoughts and attitudes and conversation and perspective, sort of takes us to the next step, and that's when our life changes, and that's when our relationships change. And really and truly, the first thing that leaped out at that for me is that that's the only thing we can change. We can't change our eye color or our height or our date in place of, well, we can wear heels, but that's only temporary. We can't change where we were born. We can't change the day we were born. We can't change anything about other people. We can try. We can spend our lives trying. Some of us have. We can't change anything about anybody else. The only place we can change is our own insides. The only place we can change. We can alter our outsides to a certain degree, and that is a temporary, empty kind of change. It's when we change our insides that we get this satisfying new experience of life. And of course, our reading is talking about how that happens to us in relationships, which for sure change only when we change ourselves. For sure, we can't change the other person. It's a dance we do, and our steps impact the other person. And really, what we spend a lot of time doing is saying, I wish you'd learn to dance better. and instead of learning to dance better ourselves, instead of learning how to be more graceful and how to make better transitions and how to be more loving in our own steps, we just say, what? You need lessons, you know? Go learn to dance and then come back. That's true of every relationship we have. We're always dancing with whoever it is that we're interacting with. And our perception of truth interacts with their perception of truth, and sometimes we wind up in a heap on the floor over that. But our experiences can actually change as those interactions of perception occur if we let them, if we're willing to learn from them. I read a great Facebook posting yesterday. It said, if someone else has to change in order for you to be happy, you will never be happy. I love that. If someone else has to change in order for you to be happy, you will never be happy. It's true. See, this is why I read Facebook. There's truth there. A lot of it. And there's cat videos too. I mean, how bad can it be, right? Cat videos. Anyway. It doesn't work to try and change the other person because the other isn't willing to learn how to dance better just because you want them to. Sometimes they'll come up to it in their own lives and say, okay, now I'm ready, I'm willing. But just because you want them to, they are not going to be willing to learn how to dance better. But you know what? If you change your step just a little, the dance has to shift, right? The dance will shift. The person dancing with you will automatically adjust to your new step. That's the way the dance works. It's just the way it works. So I, as I usually do, brought you a story from my own life because it's the one I know the very best. My oldest sister, not Reverend Molly, but my oldest sister, Jean, from the time I was little, I have had a very difficult relationship with her. We look a lot alike. We both have the same sort of thought. The way we think is very similar. She's a lawyer. I was a lawyer. She used to work for me. When I was in first and second grades, she was the mom substitute. And since all of her training came from mom, she wasn't very graceful about it. And so we were always cracking our heads together. And we have, I think, similar wounds. You know how our wounds come together with other people, and sometimes that can be educational in a really messy way. And that's what happened there. And the fact that she worked for me when in the law firm that I was a partner in really didn't help things at all. They didn't help things. There was a lot of baggage that we both carried into our relationship, and it was real difficult for me to be around her. She was pessimistic and negative and sarcastic. She only knew sarcastic humor. And because she knew me so well, she could really make it sting. Well, some years ago, I think it was during the time I was going to ministerial school at Holmes Institute, I had an epiphany about her. I could all of a sudden see how we were mirroring each other in our dance. We were mirroring each other, and how my steps caused her to move a certain way and act a certain way and be a certain way and vice versa. And I could see how those wounds came together and irritated both of us. They caused pain in both of us. And I found this great big ball of compassion for her only after I found a little bit of compassion for myself. I couldn't see it before then. When I found a little bit of compassion for myself, it allowed me to see that I too was pessimistic and sarcastic, and that I acted out of my own sense of unworthiness, which reacted against her sense of unworthiness, and we just got more and more and more enmeshed in it. I could see that when I brought my stuff into the same room with my sister, what I was doing was taking her hostage. And her sense of unworthiness got triggered, and then the sarcasm would just escalate until one or both of us had to just leave the room. So about a year later, after I had this aha moment of epiphany about her, she came down for Thanksgiving, And after she walked out the door, Molly and I, my sister Molly and I, both turned to each other and said, "She's really changed." We thought it was miraculous. She really had changed. She changed because we changed. We saw her with compassion, and we decided to honor her and listen to every word that she said with respect. And she felt that. She could sense that something had shifted, and she was different, and so were we. And ever since then, it's been, Thanksgiving at my house is what my family does, and my family is my sisters and my brother and Jean's kids and their kids, and it's always a really good time. It's always a really relaxed time. We have a lot of fun together, and we love each other up a whole lot during that time. And I've learned to see how amazing she is. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm glad that I have been able to change my thoughts and attitudes and conversation and perspective of her and stop taking her hostage. My soul saw an opportunity there for me to learn something. And it directed me into the place where I could do what I needed to do. The first opportunity, I think, was for me to find some compassion for me. And I think that's the first thing we have to do. It's perhaps the most amazing thing of all about that whole situation was that I got to find out how little compassion I had for myself. I don't think we realize what the standards we hold ourselves to. Every one of us, we hold ourselves to crazy standards. We're brought up to work harder, to get more status or more prestige or more whatever. We flog ourselves to go to work even if we're ill. We take ourselves to such lengths in order to be okay. Stuff we'd never expect from anyone else, but we hold ourselves to this really high standard without compassion. We're very compassionless toward ourselves in many cases. We're also told not to be egotistical, which somehow self-care is supposed to be egotistical in society's mind. We're told not to expect to be mollycoddled, all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't expect to be mollycoddled, but I would have loved to have someone model a little self-compassion for me, because it took me many years to even crack that window open and see that was the first thing that had to happen. I had to have this much compassion for me and my woundedness and my limitations and the fact that I got tired when I worked really, really hard for a long time, and that I deserved to rest and take care of myself and go get a massage and, eat well and things like that. I don't think any of us do it maliciously. I think it's just part of what we're trained into. And it was only when I started to ask myself what I needed at the moment that I could see what I really needed. What I really needed was to give myself the space I needed to realize my heart was closed. My heart was closed to my sister. I had frozen her in time, back from the time she used to feed us cold scrambled eggs and tell us they tasted like raw fish. If somebody tells you that, it's true. It's true, especially when you're little and they're big. So, I had frozen her in time, and I was not letting her be who she was now, because my heart was closed towards her. The relief in that, is amazing. The relief when you look at your list of all the things you have to do and say, if I left some of those undone, the world would still go on. And just don't do them, and take that moment to sit and ask yourself, what do I really need in this moment? And feel where your heart is closed. Feel where you've got the grudge list out for yourself and you're beating yourself up. You take just that little moment of not doing but being and finding a little compassion. Wow, I'm still working on it. It's a really, really old habit, and it takes a long time to change, but I just keep reminding myself that no one deserves my compassion more than me, right? And that when I give it to myself, I can give it to the rest of the world. And if I don't give it to myself, I've got none for anybody. Once I did that, even a little bit, I started to see how my own drivenness and my own exhaustion, my own compulsion to master that to-do list left me devoid of the love that I needed to give to the rest of the world. It left me devoid of compassion for somebody else who hadn't finished their to-do list. You know, I used to wonder why people couldn't do it. You know, just keep working till you've crossed everything off the list. I didn't say so out loud, but my thoughts were not compassionate. When I was able to finally see that my lack of compassion was what was getting in the way, and when I was able to see what my lack of compassion did to me, I was also able to see what I was doing to others through not having any compassion for them. See, my soul saw an opportunity to tutor me to tutor me in how to open my heart, to tutor me in how to really see who I was, and then thereby really see who other people were. Really look at them and change the perspective I had of other people and where they were and how they were coming into this dance that we were doing together. And of course, once I started to do that, those people started to change. Just like my sister did. They started to change. They started to change big time. Our souls always see the opportunity in every circumstance we run up against. The soul sees the opportunity to change and learn and grow. But particularly the ones where we have this edge, where we have this pain, this angst coming into them. Imagine how your life would change if you saw, if instead of seeing that person who rubs you the wrong way as a challenge to get rid of, you saw them as someone your soul had directed you to learn something specific to you. Can you imagine how immediately your thoughts and attitudes about them would be different? Consider that person that you see regularly and interact with regularly who works your last nerve. Got that person in mind? And soften your vision just a little bit. Just soften your vision enough to see them as tailor-made for you. They're coming to you tailor-made for your own evolution and growth, for you to be fuller and freer. They're the tailor-made catalyst for you to learn how to open your heart. There's a great Buddhist story about this that I just love. There was a monastery where one of the monks, we'll call him Zhao was rude and lazy, and he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and all the other monks really didn't like him. When they were allowed to talk, they would get together and complain about what a schmuck Zhao was. He spoke rudely to other people, and he made other people do his work, etc. Well, one day he showed up to his work site, and he didn't do any work. And the monk that he was assigned to work with got really angry and started to get pretty heated with him, and they started to argue. And the second monk said something so insulting that Zhao turned on his heel, grabbed his little bundle of goods, and took off down the road away from the monastery. A few minutes later, the abbot showed up. The abbot had been looking for Zhao, and he said to the monk, "Where's Zhao?" And the monk said, "He got angry and he left the monastery." And the abbot said, "He left the monastery? Which direction did he go?" And the monk pointed the direction, and the abbot took off down the road. And the other monk comes running after and says, "Abbot, please, he's so difficult. Don't go after him." And the abbot said, "You don't understand. I pay Zhao to be here. I pay him to stay here and be who he is so that you can learn what I'm trying to teach you." Such is the soul. Such is the soul. She knows what each one of us needs and guides us to the person who can show it to us, who can work our last nerve until we're ready to open our hearts and see them truly. See them for the glorious, damaged, wounded, hurting, magnificent, beautiful creation of God that they are. So the opportunity is always there. I know that once I freed myself from my judgments about my sister, she really had changed. It wasn't just me. I just hadn't ever seen it before. She'd really turned into a funny, delightful, kind, loving. She sits over in the corner and does her knitting and makes funny jokes, not sarcastic ones anymore. It's amazing. It truly is. I could see who she really was. That opportunity is always there. It's always there. We can learn to see that in everyone. And sometimes we learn it best from that person we just can't stand. Sometimes that is our best learning opportunity, because the soul is very wise. The soul will take us right where we need to be. And the growth has everything to do with us. It has everything to do with who we are becoming. It has to do with changing our thoughts to thoughts of love, and changing our attitudes to attitudes of acceptance and valuing and honoring the other. It has to do with changing our conversation to a conversation of kindness and compassion and deep listening, and changing our perspective to a perspective that lets us see the divine in that person, in every person. And so the change always has to start within us. And our reading suggests that we practice making these changes in our conversation, in our perspective, and in our thoughts, and in our way of being. And if we just continue to practice them, particularly on that person who's working our last nerve, they will change. Like a miracle. It'll be like a miracle. They will change. And when you see that change, listen carefully, because you will hear your soul singing. You'll hear your soul jumping up and down for joy that you have stayed in where you needed to be long enough to make the breakthrough. See, a lot of us can do it for a while, and we stop just short of the breakthrough. We can stand that person, we can see that person with love for a little bit of time, and then all of a sudden we're back to the way we used to be. You know, judging, boxing in, feeling everything, taking everything personally, doing that taking hostages thing again. And when you find yourself doing that, again, it's just a simple shift, a softening of perspective that lets you see them for who they really are, a little different step in the dance. And then the breakthrough comes. And then you could see them for who they really are, and then you could see you for who you really are. Because we're all just God's children, trying to become more of who we came here to be. So the reason that I brought this email that I got out here today is because today the polls opened in Crimea, and this is actually an email from my friend, Reverend Dr. Barbara Leger, who has Temino Spiritual Center in Ukraine. And there's something in here that I thought was so perfect for today. She said that she had all of her practitioners there being calm in the midst of the fire that's raging all around them, she said. And she said, when asked what to do 2 weeks ago, almost to a person, our practitioners said, remove aggression from my own heart. So that can be a great lesson for us all today in remembering where the change happens. The change happens within our own hearts. This is where we forgive others and realize that even, as her practitioner said, even those Russian troops are God incarnate. Remove all the aggression from our own hearts. Shift our own perspectives to be able to see each other deeply. And understand that where we are because our soul has led us there, has provided us this opportunity to grow. And so please join me as we pray together, as we affirmatively remember our relationship with all that is. In this moment, I know that God is all there is, that there is nothing outside of this universal intelligence, this spirit, this spark of whatever it is that caused the universe to flare into being, that caused this planet to be created, that caused the conditions to be perfect for life to arise, that caused and set up a system whereby life evolves continuously. This intelligence that somehow set off the spark that allowed us to become conscious of ourselves. Conscious that there is something within us that is far greater than what meets the eye. It is that thing, that energy we call God. We are one with it. We are the place it shows up here on earth. We are its evolution as we evolve intellectually and spiritually and mentally and societally. And knowing this, I simply speak a word for each one of us here, that we understand ourselves with deeper compassion than ever before, that we allow ourselves the space that that compassion brings to find out what our deepest longings are, what our deepest urgings to open our hearts, to take a risk, to allow ourselves to step forward, what those deepest urgings are, and that we listen to them and we act on them, and that we know we are supported at every moment by the entire universe. We are waves on the ocean, and we have the entire ocean behind us, so that we step forward boldly and confidently with great big open hearts and great big open minds to do that which ought to be done by us. And I know this is simply the truth of who we are, that we are at that juncture of time and space where fearlessness lies before us, and we step into it with joy. And so I say thank you. I say thank you for this time we have had together. Thank you for each person who is here. Thank you for this community and its life, and thank you for life itself, this amazing adventure of spiritual beings having a human existence. And in gratitude, I release these words knowing that the universe always says yes to us, always. So I just let them be, knowing they are so. And we anchor it and acknowledge it by saying together, and so it is. It's a good thing we know how to follow you, Kenny. Yeah. So now we have an opportunity to give to support this center and its works. And I invite you for a moment to just become conscious of all the abundance in your life, your home and your friends, and the fact that you have food in your cupboards, and this community to be part of. And there's so many blessings that we have that we just don't think about often enough, I think. And take out your contribution or your gift, or if you give by automatic withdrawal, bring it to your mind. And simply be grateful that you have to give from. And if you're not feeling that abundant, imagine in your mind what you want to receive, and imagine yourself giving from that. Gratitude is the appropriate response for the gifts of life, and it's also the attitude that makes more welcome. It simply says, I love what I have received, and I'm going to love what I continue to receive. So be proud to give the gift of you. And as I say, if you don't have that abundance right now, simply bless the basket as it goes by, because that energy simply builds and builds and builds, and we appreciate your blessing. Just hold it in your hand for a second and bless the abundance of this community. So right now, let's affirm together. Gratefully, I give with an attitude of abundance.
Gratefully, I give with an attitude of abundance.
I know that as I give, so do I receive.
I know that as I give, so do I receive.
And so it is.
And so it is.